It takes a village to raise a child, but it takes an entire order to raise a Jedi. This was true at every point in the Jedi Order's history. Force-sensitive children were discovered at birth and documented so that, when they were old enough to leave their parents, they were brought to the Jedi Temple to commence their training. These young Jedi were called Jedi Younglings or Initiates, and they would continue to be called that until they began their apprenticeship under an experienced Jedi. The life of a young Jedi was one full of education, training, and indoctrination. Initiates' training varied throughout the Order's history, but in today's video, we'll be focusing on their training during the Golden Age of the Republic and walk through what their life looked like from the moment they joined the Order until they became a Padawan.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
During this time of peace, children of the Republic were tested at birth to determine their Force sensitivity. Those who were deemed sensitive enough were registered with the Jedi Order, then allowed to remain with their parents until around 3 years of age. As we've mentioned before, the children were never taken without their parents' consent. However, most parents allowed their children to join the Order, as the Jedi could give them a brighter future than many people in the Republic could, especially those from less fortunate worlds or social castes. When the toddlers were brought to the Jedi Temple, they officially began their Jedi life as younglings. This was a term their carers often used affectionately, though the official rank was Initiate. Until they were taken on as a Padawan by an experienced Jedi, all the younglings lived in the Temple's creche, which is another word for nursery. Within the creche, children were housed in different sections based on their age. That ranged from toddlers to preteens. Toddlers, of course, were supervised throughout the day by Jedi Minders whose job it was to care for the young children. Reginald Cole, one such Minder, would often speak of the trying but happy days he had spent with the younglings, recounting how they could be cranky if they missed their nap, how peaceful they sounded when they were asleep, and how chaotic life could be when the little monsters discovered they could essentially do magic. Like any young child, younglings were encouraged to play with their minders and each other to develop their social skills and a sense of community. Physical activity was encouraged, as was mindfulness over one's emotions. Discipline was taught early through structured routines. Another aspect of temple life were the youngling clans, 15 groups consisting of about 20 students each. When children first arrived at the temple, fosterers used the Force to see into their future and divide them into one of the 15 clans. Think of the Sorting Hat from Harry Potter. Bear Clan members were chosen for their Force-seen bravery and courage. Begrifta Clan were chosen for their loyalty and ability to stay true to themselves. Dragon Clan were known for their tenacity. Heliost Clan were chosen for their deep insight and often studied with the temple's lawkeepers. Catan Clan were chosen for their proclivity for stealth. Squall Clan were known for their agility. Other clans were the Boma, Soaring Hawkbat, Thrantar, Trackor, Wolf, and Clawmouse clans, as well as 2 clans whose name has been lost to history. Once they were placed into these clans, younglings would stay together until they graduated. They would form one unit, living and training together. Each clan had an instructor that supervised their early training, led them to the refectories where students took their meals, and ensured they got used to their new life. Each clan was an initiate's new family, and they worked and studied together to become Jedi. During their time as initiates, students also wore a uniform from the moment they could walk. This consisted of a grey or tan tunic and leggings with a brown leather belt and boots. Initiates were responsible for maintaining their clothing on a day-to-day basis, although laundry facilities were available for deeper cleaning. For those non-humanoid Jedi who couldn't wear clothes, they were given sashes in the same colours. Initiate uniforms, like Jedi garb, were designed to show simplicity and humility, 2 traits all Jedi aspired toward. From the moment they arrived at the temple, younglings began their training in the Jedi ways. This training was, of course, age-appropriate and supervised by experienced Jedi Masters whose main duties were training the initiates. Training began after initiates joined their new clans. Keep in mind, at this age, most children are still learning very basic things such as letters and numbers. That's why an initiate's lessons covered both Jedi-specific topics and general academics. Their days were rigidly structured to include every subject they would need, guided by Jedi Masters and unranked Jedi from the Education Corps. In the morning, initiates practiced their Force abilities. Students honed their skills and were taught the 3 applications of the Force: Control, Sense, and Alter. At noon, students focused on traditional academics, where non-Jedi teachers taught a variety of general studies such as politics, galactic law, science, and language. These lessons were particularly important as they taught the Jedi about life outside their sheltered temple and prepared them for the world that awaited them. The afternoon was allocated to physical education, from learning how to use the Force to enhance their reflexes to lightsaber training. Specialized lightsaber instructors taught the initiates the basics of lightsaber combat as well as forms 1 through to 7. 5 meditation sessions were also sprinkled throughout their day alongside communal meals. The first thing students were taught was the Jedi Code and the 3 pillars: the Force, knowledge, and self-discipline. These would form the foundation for their future lives as Jedi. Additionally, initiates were given a copy of the Jedi Path, a manual for students of the Force. They were also expected to know the temple's layout as well as the history of the Jedi memorialized in the temple. Young Jedi were taught their history so that, through these lessons, they could understand the traditions and philosophy of the Jedi Order. Between the ages of 4 and 8, initiates learnt the very basics of lightsaber combat with low-powered training sabers. This was, of course, for everyone's safety. We don't think we need to explain why giving a 4-year-old a deadly laser sword wasn't the best idea. They also relied on small training droids to teach deflection and precognition. When they were old enough, younglings undertook an ancient ritual known as the Gathering. This sacred ritual took place on the icy crystal caves of Ilum, where the younglings had to enter and collect their own lightsaber crystals. During the Gathering, younglings would be tested by the Force. They would face their deepest fears and doubts, and if they proved strong enough to persevere, they would be guided by the Force to where their crystal was located in the cave. After they had successfully gathered their crystal, initiates were taught by Master Yoda, an architect droid professor that had helped over 1,000 generations of Jedi craft their sabers. Under the tutelage of Yoda, the initiates learnt about the different saber parts and how to allow the Force to guide their choice in materials. Once they were ready, Master Yoda oversaw the actual construction of the saber, which was a pivotal moment in any initiate's life. The ultimate goal of an initiate's training was for them to graduate from their early education and become a Jedi Padawan, an apprentice under a more experienced Jedi Knight or Master. As we mentioned, initiates trained and studied together throughout the decade, or so they remained at the Jedi Academy. When they were old enough, usually around 12 to 14, initiates undertook their graduation tests known as the Initiate Trials. These 3 tests were designed to test a youngling's progress through their training. The first trial tested the initiate's understanding of the Jedi Code. The second was designed to test their self-discipline, usually through meditation or blindfolded lightsaber combat. The second option wasn't so much a test of their skill as much as a test of their technique and focus. The third and final trial tested the strength and fluidity of their connection to the Force. Although every initiate took these trials, not all passed. Depending on their results, there were 3 paths ahead of them. For those who passed all 3 trials, most would go on to become a Padawan to another Jedi. Since there were too many initiates for Jedi to know them all personally, initiates would participate in the annual apprentice tournament, an event designed for them to compete and show off their saber and Force skills. Potential masters watched the participants closely to get an idea of whom they might want to take on as an apprentice in the future. For those initiates who were never selected, however, or even worse, failed their trials, there were 2 options. The first option was being directed to the Service Corps by the Council of Reassignment. As members of the Service Corps, these students wouldn't continue their studies in the Force or with the saber. Instead, they focused on serving the galaxy in more minor ways with their limited capabilities, such as by growing the food the Order ate. The second option was always open to an initiate, leaving the Order entirely. If a student didn't want to serve in the Service Corps or they weren't able to become a Jedi, the Order often recommended they step away from the Jedi entirely and live their lives peacefully, using what they'd learnt to better society around them. Being a Jedi wasn't easy. Their lives were full of tough choices, hard battles, and moral dilemmas. That's why initiate training was as thorough as possible to ensure young Jedi were given the proper foundation to flourish under their masters. But what do you think? How do you think the initiate training could have been improved? Feel free to let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.